At 13 years old, I learned two things that would stay with me for the rest of my life. First, that people don't always mean it when they say they love you. And second, that when someone shows you who they really are, believe them. My name's Caleb. I'm 31 now, and this story still feels like it happened yesterday. Like I can still smell the gasoline from that pitiful roadside station and hear the crunch of gravel under my shoes as I walked into the unknown. What kind of parents abandon their child at a gas station and just drive off like it's the most normal thing in the world? Mine did. And now, almost 2 decades later, they've suddenly reached out to me. Like nothing happened. Like they didn't completely destroy the very idea of family for me. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where it all started. Back to the year everything cracked wide open. I was born to two people who really shouldn't have been parents. My dad, Jerry, was a gruff, bitter man who never missed a chance to tell the world how much smarter and stronger he was than everyone else. He had this warped idea of what it meant to be a real man, and anything outside of that narrow definition was weakness. He grew up poor, clawed his way into a middle-class job at some regional distribution company, and treated that paycheck like a badge of honor. He expected everything to be earned through blood, sweat, and tears, but only on his terms. My mom, Lorraine, was different. Cold, but in a quiet way. She always kept up appearances. Always the friendly neighbor. Always smiling at church. But at home, she was like a ghost that floated through the house. Only visible when she was correcting you, criticizing you, or reminding you what a disappointment you were. If Jerry ruled with a shout, Lorraine ruled with silence. And that silence could crush your spirit faster than any belt. I wasn't an only child. I had a sister named Tessa, 2 years older than me, full of fire and fury. She was everything I wasn't: loud, brash, athletic, confident. And for some reason, my parents worshipped the ground she walked on. She could do no wrong. Broke a window? It was probably my fault. Failed a class? The teacher must be terrible. Came home drunk at 15? Just experimenting, nothing to worry about. Meanwhile, I got berated if I left a spoon in the sink. If I forgot to take the trash out, I'd get a 30-minute lecture about how I'd never amount to anything. They treated me like a burden, like a charity case they were forced to raise. I never understood what I did to deserve that kind of treatment. I didn't fight back, didn't yell, didn't cause problems. I just tried to stay invisible. Maybe that was the problem. They only respected noise, not quiet resilience. By the time I was 11, I had already learned how to make myself small. I stopped asking for help with homework, stopped inviting friends over, stopped trying to share anything about myself. If I got a B on a test, my dad would grunt and say, "What happened to the A?" If I scored an A, he'd just nod like it was expected and move on. My mom wouldn't even look up from folding laundry. Tessa, meanwhile, could bring home a crayon drawing and get a full-blown celebration. Look at this. Isn't she talented? She's going to be an artist one day. I remember sitting in the corner of the living room during one of those moments, holding my own sketchbook, but I didn't show anyone. I knew it wouldn't matter. The first time I remember realizing something was deeply wrong was on my 12th birthday. I woke up early, excited. Not because I expected presents or a party. Those had stopped when I turned 9, but because I thought maybe this year, they'd just remember. Just a happy birthday would have been enough. I came downstairs. Tessa was eating cereal at the table. Dad was on the couch yelling at the TV. Mom was doing her nails. No one said anything. No card. No cake. Not even a glance. I waited. All day. I even casually mentioned that one of my friends had the same birthday, hoping it would jog something. My mom just said, and went back to her phone. That night, I sat on the porch by myself and watched the stars, silently wishing for a different life. That was the first year I didn't cry. I think something inside me started to harden that day. The next year, things escalated. I had always struggled with math. It just didn't click for me like English or history did. So I failed a quiz. I brought it home, already bracing myself. My dad didn't even look at it. He just ripped it in half and tossed it on the kitchen counter. "You're useless," he muttered. "At least your sister's going somewhere. You'll be lucky to bag groceries." My mom didn't correct him. She just poured herself a glass of wine. That night, I overheard them talking in the living room. I was supposed to be asleep, but my room was right above them. My dad said, "We're wasting our time with that boy. He's dead weight." My mom responded, "Maybe we shouldn't have had a second kid. He's nothing like Tessa." I remember staring at the ceiling, my heart pounding so loudly I thought it would crack my ribs. I didn't sleep at all. They started forgetting to pick me up from school. Not once, not twice, regularly. I'd sit on the curb for hours, hugging my backpack, watching the sun go down. Sometimes I'd walk home alone, even though it was over 3 miles away. I once asked my dad why they kept forgetting. He said, "You've got legs, don't you?" That was the end of that conversation. Eventually, I stopped expecting anything from them. I became this quiet, drifting presence in the house. A ghost with a pulse. And then came the day that changed everything. It was summer. I had just turned 13. My sister was going to some sleepaway sports camp, and I guess my parents didn't want me in the house while they had the place to themselves. They said they were taking a road trip, just me and them, no distractions. I was confused but secretly hopeful. Maybe they wanted to reconnect. Maybe they were going to surprise me with something nice. I packed a bag with some clothes, my sketchbook, and a book I'd been reading. We got in the car early in the morning. The radio was off. My dad drove. My mom stared out the window. No one spoke for most of the ride. After about 2 hours, we pulled off the highway and stopped at this dingy, remote gas station in the middle of nowhere. One of those places with cracked pavement and a single flickering light above the door. My dad turned off the engine and looked at me. "Go inside and grab a snack or something," he said. "We'll fill up." I nodded and stepped out. As soon as the door closed behind me and I walked into the little store, I felt something in my chest, a weird tightness. I looked through the dusty shelves and picked out a granola bar. When I came back outside, the car was gone. Just gone. No note. No call. Nothing. At first, I thought maybe they pulled around the back, playing some twisted joke. I checked the sides of the building. Nothing. I waited. 5 minutes. 10. An hour. The sun started to dip. I asked the cashier if they'd seen where the car went. He just shrugged. Didn't see nothing. I didn't even have a phone. They hadn't let me have one yet. Said I wasn't responsible enough. My backpack had a few dollars, a change of clothes, and a half-filled water bottle. That was it. I sat on the curb in front of that gas station until it got too dark to see. No one came. Eventually, I wandered behind the building and curled up in a shallow ditch, pulling my hoodie tight around me. It got cold. I barely slept. I kept thinking, this is a mistake. They'll come back. But deep down, I already knew. I wasn't lost. I was abandoned. And now, 18 years later, after building a whole new life, they've just messaged me out of nowhere. Like nothing ever happened. Like I didn't sleep in a ditch and vanish from their world without a second thought. And that message? That pathetic, casual, forward message? "Hey Caleb, it's Mom." I didn't answer the message right away. Honestly, I just stared at it for a long time. For words. "Hey Caleb, it's Mom." I hadn't seen her name in over a decade. Not since I erased it from my memory along with the cold echo of her voice. I sat in my apartment, hands trembling slightly, unsure if I was feeling anger, shock, confusion, or something far worse. The faint, unwanted flicker of curiosity. But before I get to what happened next, you need to understand the lead up. The slow-boiling nightmare that pushed me over the edge. Because the gas station wasn't just the end of my childhood. It was the climax of years of being broken down, dehumanized, and forgotten. That betrayal wasn't a one-time act. It was the final chapter in a book they'd been writing since the day I was born. The year before they abandoned me was the worst. I was 12, awkward, quiet, lanky, and still clinging to this naive belief that if I just tried hard enough, I'd earn their love. I stopped complaining about things. I volunteered to do more chores. I started leaving little drawings around the house, hoping maybe they'd be proud. But nothing changed. If anything, they resented me more for trying. Tessa, meanwhile, was in full golden child mode. By then she was on the school's varsity soccer team, had a boyfriend 2 years older than her, and was basically a teenage queen bee. My parents funded her every whim. New cleats? Done. Private coaching? Of course. Weekend trips with friends? Here's $100. But when I asked for a $15 field trip for the science club, my mom laughed and said, "Why? So you can waste more time with those nerds." I remember one weekend in particular. My middle school was hosting a small art exhibition, and one of my sketches, something I'd spent weeks perfecting, had been chosen for display. I told my parents about it 3 times, wrote it on the fridge calendar, even printed out a flyer and handed it to my mom. "We'll see," she said, already half distracted by her phone. The night of the exhibit, I stood in the school gymnasium, wearing my best shirt and waiting by my peace like a puppy waiting at the door. Parents were everywhere, taking pictures, hugging their kids, buying little framed versions of their art. I kept glancing at the door. 6:15, 6:30, 7 o'clock. They never came. Tessa had a soccer practice, and apparently that took priority. Again, I walked home that night in the rain. Soaked. Alone. Sketchbook tucked under my jacket like it was the only thing keeping me warm. That was the first time I started to hate them. Hate. That's not a word I throw around lightly. I didn't want to feel it, didn't want to become someone twisted by bitterness, but something snapped inside me that night. It's one thing to be forgotten. It's another to be invisible on purpose. A few weeks later, I got sick. Like, actually sick. High fever, chills, vomiting. I told my mom, and she handed me 2 aspirin and told me to drink water. Said she had a hair appointment. I stayed in bed for 2 days without anyone checking in. No doctor. No thermometer. Just silence. I remember crawling to the bathroom at one point and throwing up so hard I saw stars. I lay on the tile floor afterward, cheeks against the cold porcelain, thinking, if I died right now, would they even notice? And yet, I still tried. Even after all of that, I kept trying. One morning, I made them breakfast. Eggs, toast, coffee. I got up early, followed a recipe I found in an old book from the library. I thought maybe a small act would spark something. They came downstairs. My dad glanced at the table, grunted, "What's this supposed to be?" My mom sniffed the coffee, wrinkled her nose, and said, "This tastes burnt." They didn't eat. Tessa came down, grabbed a Pop-Tart, and said, "God, Caleb, trying to poison us or something?" Then they left. That was the morning I stopped trying. I withdrew completely, went numb, did what I had to do to survive, but stopped talking unless I had to. My teachers noticed, but whenever they called home, my parents spun some lie about me being difficult, sensitive, or not putting in the effort. I once overheard my mom on the phone with a teacher saying, "We've tried everything. He's just broken." Broken. That word haunted me. And then came the betrayal. The one that still makes my stomach twist when I think about it. It started with a lie, one of Tessa's. She had taken my dad's car for a joyride one night. She didn't even have her license yet. Snuck out with her boyfriend, drove around town, and hit a mailbox. She panicked, came home, and parked the car like nothing happened. But by morning, the damage was obvious. Scratches, a dented fender, a cracked mirror. I knew immediately what was going to happen. And sure enough, that afternoon, I was sitting on the couch reading when my dad stormed in. "Did you take the car last night?" he barked. "No," I said, heart racing. "I didn't even leave the house." "Tessa said you did." I looked at her. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed, expression unreadable. "She's lying," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "She said she saw you sneaking out. Said you've been acting weird. Don't you lie to me, boy." I stood up, panicked. I didn't. I swear. I was in my room all night. You can check. But it didn't matter. Tessa shrugged and said, "I just thought you should know. He's been getting into stuff lately. I saw him with your keys once." That was all it took. My dad grabbed me by the collar and shoved me against the wall. Not hard enough to leave a mark, but enough to terrify me. "You think you can just do whatever you want and lie about it?" In my house. I tried to speak, but my throat closed up. My mom appeared behind him, arms folded, cold as ever. "We don't need this kind of behavior, Jerry. Not when we're already dealing with enough. Maybe it's time we teach him some consequences," my dad growled. They grounded me for 2 weeks. Took away my books, my sketchpad, my only form of escape. And I was forced to write an apology letter to them both, dictated by my mother, about how I had endangered the family and broken their trust. I cried that night, not because of the punishment, but because the people who were supposed to love me had looked me in the eye and chosen a lie over me. Again, that was the first time I planned to run away. I had a spot in the woods behind our neighborhood. Nothing special, just a clearing where I used to sit and draw. I packed my backpack one night, some clothes, a flashlight, a few snacks. I sat in that clearing for hours, staring at the stars, trying to convince myself to leave. But I was scared. Not of the dark. Not of being alone. I was scared that no one would even come looking. So I went back. And not long after that, came the gas station. I think they knew I was done. I think they saw the last spark fade from my eyes. Maybe they didn't want to deal with the husk they'd created. Maybe they thought they were cutting their losses. They dropped me off like a broken appliance. And drove away. No note. No goodbye, no explanation. Just the sound of gravel under tires, fading into the distance. And now, 18 years later, after silence, after pain, after disappearing completely from my life, my mom sends me a message. Hey Caleb, it's Mom. Just like that. Like she's texting a friend she hasn't seen in a while. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just casual entitlement. Like the past never happened. Like she expected me to open the door and let them walk right back into my life. I didn't reply. Not yet. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. Why now? What do they want? And more importantly, what do I do next? When I say I vanished after that gas station, I mean it. No police reports. No search parties. No news coverage. No tearful mother sobbing on the evening news, begging her missing son to come home. Because no one was looking for me. I wasn't kidnapped. I was discarded. Tossed out like an old phone that didn't work anymore. If someone had come across me back then, scrawny, dazed, sitting on the curb outside a grimy gas station with nothing but a backpack and a granola bar, they probably would have assumed I ran away. But I didn't. I was pushed. That first night, I didn't sleep. The ditch behind the gas station had tall grass and cigarette butts, and I curled up there because it was the only place out of sight. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just lay there, staring at the moon, my arms wrapped around my backpack like it could shield me from the world. I kept replaying it in my head, every second from the car ride, every glance, every word, every silence. The worst part? It didn't even surprise me. By morning, I knew they weren't coming back. I waited until the station opened and went inside. The clerk, a wiry old man with a beard that looked like it hadn't been trimmed in years, eyed me with suspicion. I bought a bottle of water with my last $2. He asked where my parents were. I lied and said they were on their way. He shrugged and went back to his newspaper. I wondered after that. For a while, I just walked. I had no plan, no destination, just one foot in front of the other. Sometimes I'd find a park and sleep under the slide. Sometimes I'd dig through dumpsters behind grocery stores for bruised fruit or stale bread. I learned to look for churches. They had water fountains and sometimes snacks after services. I showered in public restrooms. Used my hoodie as a pillow. I was 13 and utterly alone. I thought I'd die that way. But life's funny. Sometimes, when everything is stripped away, when you're standing at the edge of nothing, something strange and fragile grows inside you. Hope. It came in tiny moments at first. A woman at a bus stop who handed me half a sandwich and didn't ask questions. A librarian who let me sit in the back and read for hours without shooing me away. A janitor who let me sleep in the school gym bleachers during a thunderstorm. These weren't grand gestures. No one tried to save me, but they reminded me that kindness still existed. Eventually, I found myself in a small town about 40 miles from where I'd been left. It was quiet, surrounded by fields, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone. I stuck to the alleys and side streets, but one day, I caught the attention of a man named Don. Don ran a mechanic shop. Big guy, oil-stained hands, always chewing sunflower seeds. He caught me digging through the dumpster behind his place. I froze, expecting him to yell or call the cops. Instead, he tilted his head and said, "You hungry, kid?" I nodded. He didn't ask anything else. Just handed me a half-eaten hoagie and a bottle of orange soda. I sat behind the shop and ate like I hadn't tasted food in weeks. When I finished, he came back out and said, "You got somewhere to be?" I shook my head. "All right," he said. "You sweep the shop, you eat lunch here. Deal." That was the beginning. Don didn't talk much, and I didn't either. But every day, I swept the floors, emptied the trash, cleaned up oil spills. In return, I got lunch, and sometimes leftovers to take with me. I never told him where I went at night. But eventually, he figured it out. One evening, as I was slipping out the back, he stopped me. "You sleeping in that alley down by Mill Street?" I hesitated. "Yeah," he said, rubbing his chin. "That's no place for a kid." "I'm fine," I muttered, backing away. "Didn't say you weren't," he replied. "But you want to sleep in the office? I got a cot in there. No one's using it." I didn't answer, but the next night, I showed up. I stayed in that office for over a year. Don never pried. He never asked what happened, or where I came from, or why I didn't have parents. He just taught me things, how to change oil, how to rotate tires, how to listen to the rhythm of an engine. I was good at it. My hands were small, good for tight spaces. My brain absorbed it fast. Fixing engines was like solving a puzzle, and for the first time in my life, I felt useful. I felt capable. When I turned 15, Don handed me a clipboard and said, "You're going to start taking inventory. Keep track of supplies. Think you can handle that?" I nodded. He gave me a key to the shop a few weeks later. At 16, he helped me get a forged ID. Nothing fancy, just enough to make it easier to get by, to buy food, to avoid questions. He knew someone who knew someone. I didn't ask. By 17, I was running the place when he took the day off. But more than the work, more than the meals, more than the roof, Don gave me something I hadn't had in years. Trust. He didn't coddle me, didn't treat me like a charity case. He just saw me, and that was enough. Eventually, I got my GED. The local community center offered night classes, and Don covered the fee without telling me. Just slipped the receipt into my toolbox one morning. I remember holding that piece of paper, heart pounding, realizing that someone believed I was worth investing in. From there, I applied to a small vocational school, learned advanced mechanics, a bit of business. By 20, I was managing Don's shop full-time. He was getting older, his hands starting to shake, and one day, he just handed me the keys. "Place is yours if you want it," he said. "I've seen the way you run it. Better than I ever did." I stood there stunned. "You're giving it to me?" "Not giving," he said. "You earned it." He wouldn't take money. Said his kids had their lives, and the shop needed someone who loved it. Someone who understood what it meant to start from nothing. So I took it, rebranded it. Second Chance Auto. Because that's what it was, for me, and for anyone else who walked through the doors needing a hand. I started hiring teens who'd been in the system. Runaways. Kids like me. Taught them the trade. Gave them a place to sleep if they needed it. Made sure they knew someone believed in them. Not everyone made it. Some slipped away, lost in their own demons. But some stayed. Some thrived. By 25, I had opened a second location. By 28, I was consulting for other shops. And now, at 31, I own 5 businesses across 3 counties. People call me sir now. Banks ask for my advice. And when I walk into a room, I don't feel invisible anymore. But I never forgot where I came from. Never forgot the gas station, the ditch, the granola bar, the silence of a world that had written me off. Which is why, when that message popped up on my phone, it felt like a crack in the sky. "Hey Caleb, it's Mom." I didn't open it for 2 days. I just stared at it, paralyzed. What do you do when the ghost of your past suddenly knocks? Do you answer? Do you run? Do you burn the bridge before they even try to cross it? On the 3rd day, I clicked it open. It was short. "Hey Caleb, it's Mom. We'd love to talk sometime. Hope you're doing well. We're proud of you." Proud of me. I laughed out loud. The kind of laugh that comes from somewhere deep in your ribs. Proud. After everything. After abandoning me like garbage, they were proud. I didn't reply, but curiosity got the better of me. I searched their names. Turns out, they were struggling. Badly. My dad had lost his job 3 years ago. Some kind of downsizing. My mom had a minor stroke the year after. Tessa had gone through a messy divorce and moved back in with them, bringing her 2 kids with her. They were renting a house now. Not the old one. No, that had been sold. They were barely scraping by. And then I found the article. A local business spotlight. It featured me, standing in front of one of my shops, arms crossed, smiling for the camera, talking about community, growth, and second chances. It had my name, my story, just enough detail to make the connection obvious. They'd found me. And now, after nearly 2 decades of silence, suddenly they wanted to talk. Not to apologize, not to explain, but to reconnect. Because I was successful. Because I was useful again. Because I had become the very thing they never believed I could be. And as I stared at the message, my heart pounding, something inside me began to stir. Not pain, not fear. Something sharper, something colder, but also something earned. I wasn't 13 anymore. And if they wanted to see me again, they'd have to face the man they left in that ditch. The moment I decided I wasn't going to ignore the message, something shifted inside me. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, but clarity. I wasn't that scared, broken kid anymore, desperate for crumbs of affection. I wasn't waiting to be seen. I had built something real, without them. And now, after almost 2 decades, they were poking around like they'd just misplaced their son and wanted to check if he was still breathing. I didn't reply to the message. Not yet. I needed time. Not to think. To plan. I wanted them to feel what I had felt. Lost, powerless, uninvited to the table. I didn't want to scream, or rant, or throw it in their faces. That would have been too easy. Too loud. I wanted silence to do the work. Delayed recognition. Subtle shifts. A slow boil. Because the best revenge isn't explosive. It's quiet. It's patient. It's earned. I started by digging deeper. It was easy, honestly. People leave digital footprints everywhere now, especially when they're desperate. I already knew they were struggling financially. The article about my shop must have been a slap in the face. Caleb, the useless one, succeeding in the same town they were now barely surviving in. What they didn't know was just how close I was. One of my shops was only 20 minutes away from their rental. The same streets I had wandered alone at 13 were now part of my business routes. I had likely passed them in traffic and never known. Or maybe they had seen me, recognized me, and that's what triggered the message. Either way, they had made the first move. Now it was my turn. I wasn't going to confront them directly. Not yet. That would give them too much power. Let them think they still had a say in how things ended. No, I needed to understand them first. Who they were now. How much of the old venom still lingered. I wasn't walking into this blind. So I started asking questions. Carefully. I reached out to a woman named Brenda, an old neighbor from my childhood. She used to give me cookies when my parents forgot I existed. I hadn't spoken to her in years, but when I called, she remembered me instantly. Caleb? Is that really you? Yeah, I said. It's been a while. Oh, honey, you don't even know. We thought the worst. Your parents said you ran away. There it was. The lie. They never told you the truth? No, she said quietly. They had the police over one night. Said you'd left a note. Said they tried everything. But honestly, something about it never sat right. I didn't correct her. Not yet. But I asked about my parents. How they were now, what people said. They keep to themselves mostly. Jerry's bitter as ever. Lorraine's quieter since her stroke. Tessa's living with them again. Her husband ran off, and she's got those 2 kids. Honestly, it's sad. But no one says anything. Your dad's not the kind of man you argue with. I thanked her. Promised to stay in touch. So they'd covered it up. Claimed I ran away. Which meant, from a legal perspective, I was a ghost. Interesting. I pulled more threads. I sent a lawyer, one of my clients, actually, a family friend, to look into their situation discreetly. He owed me a favor. Within a week, I had a full report. They were 3 months behind on rent. Tessa was unemployed, living off whatever child support she could drag out of her ex-husband, who had already remarried and moved out of state. My dad had drained his retirement early, burned through it trying to start a business that never took off, some half-baked idea about flipping used trucks. My mom's medical bills were piling up. They were drowning. And yet, there was no sign of humility. They hadn't sold their car, a 2014 Dodge Durango my dad still proudly drove. They still posted passive-aggressive Facebook updates about fake people and ungrateful children. No apology. No accountability. Just bitterness and blame. But it got worse. My lawyer found out they had tried to sue the state after I ran away, claiming they suffered emotional damage and needed financial assistance. The case was quietly dismissed, but they still tried to milk my disappearance for sympathy. And that made my blood boil. They left me, and then tried to profit from the story they crafted about my rebellious phase. That's when I knew I couldn't just ignore them. I had to do something, not just for myself, but for every kid who'd ever been thrown away like garbage. But again, not loud, not vengeful, not messy, smart, surgical. So I began laying the groundwork. The first step? Reclaiming the narrative. I commissioned a feature piece in a regional business magazine, something clean, professional, humanizing. We'd been approached before, but I'd always declined. Now I said yes. The writer was excellent. She interviewed me over several weeks. I told her my story, not every grim detail, but enough to paint the picture. Abandoned at 13. Built myself up from nothing. Created opportunities for other kids like me. I never mentioned my parents by name, but the implications were loud enough. The article went live the following month. It didn't go viral, but it hit the right circles, local politicians, entrepreneurs, small-town leaders. The people my father once tried to impress now saw my face smiling on the front page of the business section. 1 week later, I received a second message, this time from Tessa. Hey Caleb, I saw the article. We should talk. I stared at that one for a long time. Tessa, the golden child, the one who framed me, lied about me, stood by silently while I was buried alive. Now she wanted to talk? No, not yet. Instead, I took another step. I contacted Brenda again, this time asking a favor. Do you still have that old church contact list? The one from the neighborhood. I think so. Why? Could you invite my parents to a community event? Something small. Say it's about local entrepreneurs sharing their stories. She didn't ask questions. Just said, of course. I booked the community center under one of my side companies. No name. No photos. Just a flyer with the words, Stories of Resilience, a night of inspiration from local leaders. I invited several real speakers, people I'd worked with over the years, many with similar stories of overcoming adversity. But the final speaker? That would be me. I planned every detail carefully. The lighting, the seating chart, the timing. I made sure my parents would be seated near the front, just close enough to see me clearly, and far enough that they couldn't reach the exit without making a scene. But before that night came, I needed more. I wanted to know what kind of people they truly were now, whether they carried even a shred of remorse. So I created a burner phone and sent a message to Tessa's number. Hi, this is Caleb. I saw your message. Not sure I'm ready to talk yet. How's Mom? She replied almost instantly. She's okay. Recovering. We're all just surprised to hear from you. I didn't mention the first message. Let her think I was finally caving. I read that article, she said in a follow-up. You didn't mention us. I thought that was weird. Weird. That word stuck with me. Not cruel. Not tragic. Not painful. Just weird. As if they were characters cut from a script. Baffled, they didn't make the final cut. I kept things private, I replied. Didn't want to cause trouble. Still, it would have been nice to be included. We've all changed, you know. I almost laughed. We should meet, she wrote. Maybe grab lunch. I said I'd think about it. I didn't plan on lunch. I planned on a stage, a spotlight, and the truth. I spent the next week finalizing my speech. It wasn't angry. It wasn't bitter. It was honest. I walked through my story, not with blame, but with quiet power. I painted the image of a boy discarded, alone, and reborn through grit, kindness, and the rare mercy of strangers. I spoke about the people who helped me, not with blood, but with action. I spoke of Dawn, of the kids I now mentored, of the life I had built brick by brick. And then, I spoke of them, not by name, just as shadows, the ones who left me, and the ones who would watch me from the front row. I timed everything perfectly. The community event sold out. Small-town curiosity is powerful. I stood backstage, heart steady, suit pressed, speech in hand. Then the coordinator walked up to me, headset crackling. Your guests are here, she whispered. I peeked through the curtain, and there they were. Jerry, Lorraine, Tessa, all three sitting in the second row, eyes scanning the room. Tessa wore a forced smile. My mom looked older, thinner, her hair grayer than I remembered. My dad looked the same, rigid, bitter, jaw set like stone. None of them recognized the name on the program, but they would recognize the voice. When it began, and when it ended, and when they realized this wasn't a reunion. It was a reckoning. When my name was finally announced that night, I walked out under the lights to the sound of polite applause. Most of the audience didn't know who I was beyond the description in the program. Caleb Myers, owner of Second Chance Auto, community mentor, youth advocate. But three people in the second row froze the moment I stepped onto the stage. My mother's hand went to her mouth. My father's back stiffened like someone had yanked a wire through his spine. Tessa blinked, leaned forward, and whispered something sharp I couldn't hear. I didn't look directly at them yet. I let the moment stretch, just long enough for the realization to sink in. The stage lights were warm against my face. The crowd quieted. I took a breath. Good evening. I began, my voice calm, steady. My name is Caleb Myers. I wasn't always the man standing here tonight. Once, I was a kid no one wanted. The room fell silent. I could feel their eyes on me, hundreds of them. But it was the three in front that mattered. My father's face went pale, his lips twitching as if he might stand up and interrupt. My mother's gaze darted toward the exit. Tessa sat perfectly still, jaw clenched. I told the story, piece by piece. Not the whole horror of it, but enough. Enough to make every parent in that room shift uncomfortably in their seat. I was 13, I said, when I learned that love isn't always permanent. Sometimes, the people who are supposed to protect you are the ones who teach you fear. I was left with nothing. No home, no money, no one waiting for me. But I didn't die there. Someone helped me. A stranger. He gave me a broom and a sandwich and a chance. That's all it took to start over. Every few sentences, I let the pauses breathe. I watched the way my father's jaw tightened, the way my mother's shoulders trembled. The crowd hung on every word. When I first opened my shop, I continued. I called it second chance because that's what saved me. Not a handout, but a door left open. Now I make sure other kids like me find one too. Applause rippled softly through the hall. A few people even stood. My mother's eyes glistened. My father kept his hands folded, expression locked in stone. Tessa was whispering something urgently into her phone. I smiled politely. Thank you, I said, lowering the microphone. That's my story. But I'd like to dedicate this to the families who take in kids they didn't make, but choose to love anyway. That last line was deliberate, a dagger hidden in silk. The audience clapped again, unaware of the quiet war happening in the second row. Afterward, I lingered near the stage as people came up to shake my hand. Dozens of faces, smiling, grateful, inspired. And then, through the small crowd, I saw them approach. Jerry first, always leading, always pretending to be in control. He waited until no one else was around, then stepped forward. "So, you're alive," he said flatly, as if we were picking up a conversation from last week. I studied him for a moment. He'd aged hard. His hair was thinner, his hands trembled slightly, but that same arrogance still clung to him like grease. My mother hovered behind him, her face drawn and tired. Tessa stood with her arms folded, defensive but uncertain. "Been a long time," I said quietly. My dad gave a humorless laugh. "You could have told us you were okay. You could have made sure I was." He flinched at that, just a flicker, but I saw it. My mother tried to smile. "We made mistakes, Caleb. We were scared. We didn't know what to do when you ran off." I cut her off with a calm, level tone. "I didn't run off." She froze. "I remember exactly what happened," I said. "You stopped at a gas station and told me to grab a snack. When I came back, you were gone." Her eyes filled instantly. "Your father thought." "Don't," I said softly. "Don't rewrite it now. You left me there." A long, suffocating silence followed. The air between us was thick with 20 years of rot. I could feel my heartbeat steady, not from anger, but from control. Finally, Tessa spoke. "Look, we all made choices we regret. Things got complicated. But that was a long time ago. We wanted to reconnect. Mom's been sick. Dad's been broke." I finished. Her mouth snapped shut. I smiled faintly. "I know about the house, the job, the lawsuit, the sympathy act." My father's face turned red. "You've been digging into our lives?" I needed to understand who was contacting me. After 18 years, I think I'm entitled to some research. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You think you're better than us now? Because you got lucky? Because some fool took pity on you?" I didn't move. "No, Dad. I don't think I'm better. I know I'm free." The silence that followed was sharp as broken glass. Then, I said something I'd been waiting to say since that night. "You called me useless," I whispered. "And then you left me to die? But I built something without you. Everything you could have been proud of, I did it alone. And now you're standing here because you need something from me. So tell me, Jerry, what do you want?" He didn't answer. My mother did. Her voice was fragile. "We're losing the house. The bills, the medical stuff. We just thought maybe," she swallowed. "Maybe you could help. Just a little." There it was. The truth. Not remorse. Not reconciliation. Need. I took a long breath, then reached into my pocket. They watched, expectant, probably thinking I'd pull out a checkbook or a card. Instead, I pulled out a folded piece of paper. A business card. I handed it to my mother. "What's this?" she asked. "It's the number of a foundation that helps families in crisis," I said. "They're good people. They don't abandon children." Her hands trembled as she read the name. "You started this," she whispered. "I fund it," I replied. "They decide who deserves help." She looked up at me, eyes wet. "Please, we're your family." "No," I said quietly. "You're my origin story, not my family." Tessa's composure cracked. "You can't seriously think this fixes anything. You humiliated us out there. People are going to know." I met her gaze. "Good. Maybe they'll finally know who you really are." She took a step forward, pointing a shaking finger. "You think you're punishing us, but you're just showing everyone how heartless you've become." I smiled faintly. "Heartless? No, just precise." Then I turned to my father, who hadn't moved an inch. "You once said I'd be lucky to bag groceries. You were wrong. I'm the one who signs the paychecks now. Maybe one day, if you're honest, I'll hire you to sweep the floor." Call it closure. He didn't speak, didn't blink. His mouth opened once, then shut again. The look in his eyes wasn't anger anymore. It was fear, an emotion I'd never seen in him before. The power dynamic had shifted so completely that even he didn't know how to respond. I left them there, just turned and walked away, out the side door into the cool night air. Every breath felt lighter. But revenge, I've learned, isn't a single act. It's a ripple. The next morning, the event hit social media. Photos, quotes, a few short clips of my speech. People began connecting the dots on their own, small-town gossip spreading faster than gasoline on dry pavement. It wasn't me who told the story. It was the whispers. Wasn't that his parents in the front row? Didn't they say he ran away? I heard they left him behind somewhere. By the end of the week, my family's reputation was gone. My father's old buddies stopped taking his calls. My mother's church friends quietly distanced themselves. And Tessa? Her ex-husband filed for full custody, citing her emotional instability. Apparently, someone had sent him the recording of her outburst at the event. I didn't send it, but I didn't need to. Truth has a way of finding the surface. They tried to contact me again, of course. Dozens of calls, emails, even letters. All of them said the same things. We're sorry. We were scared. We didn't mean to. Family should forgive. I never responded. But one day, about a month later, a letter came from my mother. Not printed, but handwritten, the shaky script of an old woman. She didn't ask for money. Didn't make excuses. She just wrote one line that stopped me cold. I still see your empty seat at the table. I sat there for a long time, the paper trembling in my hand. And for the first time in years, I felt something that wasn't anger. Not forgiveness, exactly. Just distance. The realization that I didn't need to hate them anymore, because they'd already built their own prison. They had to live in the house of their own choices. I folded the letter and placed it in a small box I keep under my desk. Inside that box is the first wrench Don ever gave me, my old sketchbook from when I was 12, and a photograph of the first shop I opened. It's my reminder that everything I needed, I built. And everything they destroyed, I rebuilt better. A few months later, I returned to that same gas station. The one where it all began. It was run down now, half the pumps taped off, the sign rusted. I stood there in the parking lot, hands in my pockets, listening to the hum of distant cars. I remembered the boy who waited for a car that never came back. Then I smiled. Because he didn't die there. He just changed. I placed a folded 20 on the counter for the clerk, a small kindness for whoever came next, and walked back to my car. As I started the engine, I caught my reflection in the mirror. Not a victim. Not an orphan. A man who built his own family out of ashes. And for the first time, I said it out loud, soft but certain. I made it. Then I drove away, leaving the past exactly where it belonged. In the rearview mirror.